Good evening, everyone. In the last session, we understood how to develop our application by using Spring Framework with IOC container and dependency injection. When we are creating projects by using IOC container and dependency injection, it will take care of creating the objects and injecting the dependent object into target object. Now here, when we are using IOC container to perform the dependency injection, we are configuring the Java classes as Spring Beans. Do you know how to configure Java class as a Spring Bean? Yeah, how to configure Java class as a Spring Bean? So here beans tag will be available. Inside the beans tag, we are going to configure bean tag. Bean ID is equal to some value and class is equal to some value. So like this, we can configure a bean. Every bean should have unique ID, bean ID and bean class, right? If I want to perform the dependency injection, then inside that bean, we are going to configure subtag called property. Name is equal to some value and ref is equal to some value, right? So if I want to go for a constructor injection, then I will use a tag called construct-arg ref is equal to parameter. Construct-arg ref is equal to parameter. Like this we are going to configure the beans in the beans configuration file. How we are starting IOC container? Do you know that? How to start the IOC container? Yeah, come on. Application context is equal to new up class path XML application context. That means we are telling that our beans configuration file will be available in the class path as a XML. You can give XML file as an input and you can give annotation also for the configuration. Currently, we are using XML file to start our IOC container. When I start this IOC container, what IOC is doing? IOC is loading the beans.xml. If the beans.xml is valid, syntactically, if this file is valid, then IOC container will load this file and will read bean definitions available. So you can configure 10 bean definitions, you can configure 20 bean definitions also. It is going to load the bean definitions which are available in that file, and it is going to create the object for those classes. Those objects will be stored into IOC container. Do you know how to get the object from the IOC container? Yes, how to get the object from IOC container? In order to get the object from the IOC container, there is a method called context.getBean, that whatever the class is available, that class type we are going to pass. Now it is giving that car object. Now car is a Java class. That car class I configured as a bean in the bean configuration file, and I am starting my IOC container. IOC container loading the configuration file, reading the bean definitions and creating the objects and providing the Spring Bean. So can you guys tell me what is a Spring Bean now? What is a Spring Bean now? So the Java classes which are managing by IOC container is called as a Spring Bean. How the IOC will understand which classes it has to manage? We are configuring in the configuration file. That configuration file we are giving as a input. So class managed by IOC. Class managed by IOC is called as Spring Bean. So we are creating normal Java class. That normal Java class we are representing as a Spring Bean, so that IOC container is going to manage that class. What is the meaning of managing the class? What is the meaning of managing the class? Creating the object and calling the method. Creating the object and injecting the object is called managing. Perfect. Now here we are having our car engine application, guys. So yesterday we created this application. Car class is available and the engine classes are available. all these classes we configured in the beans.xml. So diesel engine we configured as a Spring Bean, petrol engine we configured as a Spring Bean, car also we configured as a Spring Bean. Perfect. Now here I want to get the object from the IOC container. We are getting the object from the IOC container. Okay, car object I am getting. Let me print this object system.out.println c.hash code. So what is the meaning of the hash code method? It will print the hash code of the object. Right click, run as Java application. Are we able to get the hash code of the object? Yes, we are able to get the hash code. Now let's assume that this is a C1. I want to get the first one car object. Similarly, I want to get the another car object, right? Can I create more than one object for a class? Yes or no? So if I have a employee class, I can create 10 objects also, 20 objects also, 30 objects also. Similarly, now I am asking IOC container, give me car object. How I am asking IOC to give me the car object? Context.getBean of car. It is giving me car object. That car object hash code I am printing. Then next one, context.getBean of car.class. Again, I am asking IOC to give me car object. So this is object 1 and this is object 2. Run as Java application. Can you see, is it creating two objects or it is creating only one object? It is, I am asking to give the two objects. I want to get the first car object, second car object. But what IOC is doing? IOC is creating here. Here I am calling the getBean method. Here I am calling the getBean method. IOC creating two objects or IOC giving the same object. IOC is giving the same object. Now here we need to understand a concept called Spring Bean scopes. What is the topic, guys? Spring Bean scopes. Now Spring Bean scopes is available. Bean scope is used to decide how many objects should be created for our Spring Bean class. So I am creating the object or IOC creating the object? IOC creating the object. How many objects should be created for our class will be decided by this bean scope concept. Are you getting my by IOC container is called as a Spring Bean. For that Spring Bean, how many objects should be created? That will be decided by bean scope. In the Spring, we have 4 scopes. We have 4 types of scopes. We have 4 types of scopes. The first one is singleton scope. The first one is the singleton scope. And the second one is prototype scope, and the third one is request scope, and the fourth one is session scope. In the WebMVC, we have seen request response session, right? So here in the Spring also, we are having request scope and session scope. So total, how many types of scopes available in the Spring? 4 types of scopes available. First one is singleton scope, second one is prototype scope, third one is request scope, fourth one is session scope. Are you guys getting my point? So bean scope will decide how many objects should be created for bean class. We have 4 types of scopes. One is a singleton scope, second one is prototype, third one is request, fourth one is session. So this singleton scope is called as default scope. If you don't configure any scope for the bean, did I configure any scope for the bean classes? No, I did not configure any scope for the bean classes. If we don't configure any scope for the bean, then default scope they will consider as singleton. Are you guys getting my point? The default scope they will take as singleton. So singleton means only one object will be created for the class. So in the IOC container, for our class, only one object will be created. Singleton means only one. Singleton means only one object will be created. Prototype means every time new object will be created. Prototype means every time new object will be created. Request and session we will use in the web application. Request and session scopes we will use in Spring Web MVC. Got my point? So now here I am not giving any scope. If I don't give any scope for the bean, then it comes under default scope. So here, if you call get bean method for 100 times also, how many objects will be created for the car? For the car, only one object will be created. By default, every spring bean is a singleton. So if you configure that spring bean, it is going to create only one object. Now, if I am calling context.getBean of a car, start time I am calling. For that object also I am printing the hash code. Then what is happening? Run as a Java application. What is happening? Same hash code or different hash code? Same hash code. What is the meaning of same hash code? What is the meaning of same hash code? Only one object will be created. Even if you call 100 times also, it is going to create only one object. For example, if I configure for the car, the scope is equal to prototype. So one scope is a singleton, another scope is prototype. If I don't configure any scope, then the default scope will be singleton, only one object will be created. Now here, I'm giving the scope as prototype. Now run this application, run as Java application. So now see how many objects created for the car. First object created, second object created, third object is created. So when I call context.getBean, it created one object for the car. Again, when I call the context.getBean, second object created for the car. Third time when I call the context.getBean, third object created for the car. So what is the conclusion now? How many objects are creating for our class? How many objects will be created for Spring Bean classes? How many objects will be created for Spring Bean classes? Here, Bean scope will decide how many objects should be created for the Spring Bean class. How many types of scopes we have? 4 types of scopes we have. What are those 4 types of scopes? One is singleton scope, second one is prototype scope, third one is request, fourth one is session. What is the meaning of singleton? Singleton means only one object will be created. If you call getBean method for 100 times also, IOC is going to create only one object. So if you want to create a new object every time, then you need to configure the scope as prototype. Now, how to specify the bean scope? To specify the scope, we are using a scope attribute. Now here, if you want to specify the bean scope like this, for the bean tag, bean ID, bean class, bean scope. Scope attribute I am writing. Scope, if I don't write anything, then what will happen? If I don't write anything, what will happen? Singleton. That means only one object. I don't want a singleton. Then I need to configure scope is equal to prototype. Are you guys getting my point? Now, let's observe one more scenario. I am not asking IOC to create the car object. I removed it. Okay, guys, I removed it. Now, when I start my IOC container, objects will be created immediately. When I call getBean method, object will be created. When the object will be created for the Spring Bean, at the time of IOC starting or when I call the getBean method? Come on. When you call getBean method, then only object will be created. If I don't call getBean method, object will not be created. Are you sure? See here, run as Java application. Constructor is executed. What is the meaning of that? Am I calling the getBean method? Then So when IOC is creating object for our class, when the IOC container started, immediately it is loading the bin definitions from the XML, then it is creating the object. So it is creating the object at the time of starting IOC or when I call get bin method. Come on guys. At the time of starting the IOC. Now see how many bins I configured. So how many classes I am configuring as a Spring Bean? 3 classes I am configuring. Now right click, run as a Java application. How many objects it is creating? Only 2. Why not 3? For which, how many classes I configured as a Spring Beans? Come on guys, 3 classes I configured as Spring Beans. And I am starting the IOC container. When I start the IOC container, then what IOC has to do? Load the bean definitions and create the objects. So I am running my application. Is it creating object for 3 classes? It is creating object for only 2 classes. Creating objects only for 2 classes. That means when IOC container starts, it will create the objects for singleton beans first. Are you guys getting my point? So here, diesel engine is available. What is the scope of this bean? What is the scope of this bean? Singleton. How can you say it is a singleton? Default. I'm not configuring any scope. Then by default, it comes under singleton. What is the scope of the petrol engine? Singleton. What is the scope of the car? Prototype. Now, do you understand why only these 2 objects are created? This object is not created. So the point is, whenever we start the IOC container, by default, it will create the objects for the singleton bean. Then what about prototype? When you call get bean method, then only it will create the object for the prototype. That is eager loading, lazy loading. What is the concept? Eager loading, lazy loading. When I start IOC, first it will read the bean definition file. It will check how many beans are available. There are 3 beans are available. Out of these 3 beans, which beans scope is a singleton? First 2 beans scope is a singleton. Let's create the object and keep the object ready. Why? Because singleton means if I create now, if I create later, only one time I have to create. Let me create immediately and keep it ready. Next time, when programmer asks get bean method, I will not create the new object. Object is already created. I will give the existing object. I'm going to give the existing object. Now, see here, I'm calling context.getBean for 3 times. Now I am removing the scope. If I remove the scope, then what will happen? I will remove the scope, what will happen? That will become default singleton. Now see, I'm not calling these methods. I'm just starting IOC. All the 3 beans are belongs to default scope, singleton. Now run this program, run as a Java application. Can you see now? 3 objects are created. Why it is creating object for 3 classes now? All the 3 are singleton classes now. All the 3 are singleton. Now if I make the scope is equal to prototype, how many classes it is creating object? Only for 2 classes it is creating the object. Then what about car class? When I call getBean method, then only it is going to create the object. Now see here, I'm removing the scope. It is very important topic. In the interview also they will ask, what is a bean scope in the Spring? What is a singleton scope? What is the prototype scope? When to go for singleton? When to go for prototype? Getting my point? So how many objects should be created for a bean class? That it depends on bean scope, right? Now tell me, I'm removing all things. I'm just starting my IOC container. Look at the XML. What is the scope of the first bean? What is the scope of the second bean? What is the scope of the third bean? Singleton. Now I am starting IOC container, run as a Java application. What happened? All the 3 objects are created. Now, so by this time here, if you observe, when this piece of code is executed, already objects are created. When this line of code is executed, that means my IOC container started. When the IOC container started, it will create the object for all the singleton beans available in the project. Singleton means, what is the meaning of singleton? For your class, only one object will be created. Even if you ask the object for 10 times, IOC will give you the same object. IOC is not going to create the second object for the class. Only one object will be created to save the memory. To save the memory, only one object will be created. Now, here, petrol engine object created, diesel engine object is created, car object also created. After the objects are created, then I am calling context.getBean of car. Then when I call this method, IOC will check what is the scope of the bean. If the scope is a singleton, okay, object is already created, return the existing object. Return the existing object. So whatever the object is created here, that object it will return. That object hash code I am printing. Again I am calling context.getBean of car. Every time when you call the getBean method, IOC will check the scope of the bean. Car bean, scope is singleton. That means object already available. Return the existing object. Third time I am calling context.getBean method car.class. What is the meaning of car.class? Car bean. It will check the scope of the bean. What is the bean scope? Singleton. So here I am calling getBean method for 3 times. Is it going to create 3 objects or it is going to return the same object for 3 times? It is going to return same object for 3 times. Are you getting my point? Now run this program, run as Java application. What is the hash code of the 3 objects? Same. Hash code is same means objects are different or object is only one. When you call getBean method, it is not creating the new object. It is returning the existing object only because the scope is singleton. Now let us see. I am configuring the scope as a prototype. I am configuring the scope as prototype. Now here I am not going to call these methods. When I don't call these methods, how many classes objects it is creating? 2 class objects it is creating because those 2 classes are belongs to singleton. Now here I am calling context.getBean of car. I'm calling context.getBean of car. So when I call the context.getBean of car, it will check what is the scope of the car. What is the scope of the car? Prototype. Prototype means it will create the new object. It will return the new object. Now again, I'm calling context.getBean of car. What is the scope of the car? Prototype. Then it will create the new object and will give the new object. When I'm calling context.getBean of car, it will create the new object and it will give the new object. So here I'm calling the getBean method for 3 times. The bean scope is a prototype. So it will return every time a new object. If the scope is a singleton, one object will be created and it will return the same object. When the scope is a prototype, here constructor is executed, first time object is created, here constructor is executed, second time object is executed, here constructor is executed, third time object is created. Are you guys getting my point? Now tell me, how many objects will be created for spring bean? How many objects will be created for a spring bean? So the number of objects will create for the spring bean is it depends on scope of the bean. How many types of bean scopes available? How many types of bean scopes available? There are 4 types of bean scopes available. What are those 4 types? Singleton, prototype, request, session. What is the meaning of singleton? Only one object will be created. What is the meaning of prototype? Every time new object will be created. What about the request and session? Request and session scopes we will use in the Spring Web MVC. So how to configure the bean scope? By using scope attribute. Scope is equal to prototype. Are you getting my point? Now here tell me when to go for singleton in the project, when to go for prototype in the project. When to configure our bean as a singleton, when to configure our bean as a prototype. Come on. Solid principle, no, there is no relation. Single, that is single responsibility. That is different. Singleton is different. Can you give me any scenario when we should create only one object for the class, when we should create new object for the class? Okay, good. When user login, only one time session object will be created. Till user logout, we will use the same session object. So singleton we can make for that. Okay, next one. Now see here, we are going to develop our project with the layered architecture, right? We are going to develop a project with the layered architecture. Here my controller will be available. Here my service will be available. Here my DAO will be available. Here our database will be available. So this is a controller similar to our servlet. Take the request and give the response. So here our service class will be available, and here our DAO class will be available. DAO classes are going to communicate with the database. Service class is going to communicate with the DAO. Controller will talk to service. Now here user interface will be available. UI will be available. From the UI, request will come to the controller. From the UI, request will go to the controller, controller to service, service to DAO. This is our backend application. All these three classes I will represent as a Spring Bean. Controller is a Spring Bean, service is a Spring Bean, DAO is a Spring Bean. Now, my application is accessing by 100 users. Multiple users are accessing my application. So many requests are coming to my application. For every request, do I need to create a new object for the controller, new object for the service, new object for the DAO? No, because controller is going to call the service method. Service method is going to call the DAO method. Now tell me, in order to execute this application, how many objects we need to create for these classes? For every user, do I need to create a new object? So one object will be created. By using the same object, I can call the service method. For DAO also, only one object will be created in the entire application. For example, if I make these classes are prototype, if I make the classes are prototype, then what will happen? For every request, new object will be created. 1 lakh users are accessing my application. 1 lakh requests are coming for my application. 1 lakh into 3 lakh objects will be created. The memory will be completed. Out of memory problems will come. So that is the reason Spring people thought about the memory management in the Java. They made by default every class as a singleton. Even if you send the 1 lakh requests also, only one object will be created. Using that object, you can call the method any number of times. If one object is available, by using that object, you can call that class method for 100 times, 200 times, 1000 times, 1 lakh times. So whenever we start our application, by default object will be created for the singleton bean. When the customer send a request, IOC not going to create the new object because they are singleton. Only one object will be created. What is the advantage with that singleton? Unnecessarily memory will not be wasted. By mistake, if you make your bean as a prototype, every time new object will be created. After some time, your application will run into out of memory problem. JVM memory will be completed because every time new object is created. Today 1 lakh customers are using my application. Tomorrow if 1 crore people use my application, then 1 crore objects will create, that JVM will crash. So that is the reason memory management we need to consider when we are configuring Java class as a Spring Bean. So because of this reason, because of this memory management, Spring people made singleton as a default scope. If you don't configure any scope, by default it will become singleton. Even if you ask IOC to create the object, internally it is not going to create the new object. It will create the object only one time and it is going to return the existing object. Here we have seen I'm calling context.getBean for 3 times. If I don't configure the scope, is it going to create 3 objects or it will return the same object? It is returning the same object. What is the advantage? What is the advantage? Memory management. Now, if I take 3 objects or if I take 1 object, I just need to call this method. If I have 1 object or if I have 10 objects, my method behavior is not going to change. So method is there. I want to call that method. When customer send a request, I want to call the method. To call the method, why we need 1000 objects? Why we need a new object every time? Not required. 1 object is sufficient. So in the project, 99% of the times, all the classes will be singleton classes only. Object will be created only one time when the IOC start. So every time it will use the same object to call the methods. Are you getting my point? Now, some scenario will be available in the real time. For example, now if you go to any store, if you go to a bank or if you go to a hospital, nowadays they are giving a token for you. Yes or no? So my token, your token will be same, or my token, your token will be different. For every customer, they need to generate a new token. Here, there are some classes like this. There is a class called token generator class available. There is a class called token generator and there is a class called token. So token generator class should generate a new token for every customer. Are you guys getting my point? Now, so here for every customer, do I need to create a new object for this class? For token generator, not required. So here, this class we can configure as singleton. What about the token? Token will be same for all the customers or token will be different for every customer? Token will be different for every customer. Are you getting my point? This one I am going to configure as prototype. So I should have one token with different data. You will have another token with different data. Everybody will have a different token with different data. So based on the requirement, we need to configure the class as a prototype. So if you don't want a new object for every user, then blindly go for singleton. If you have a requirement for every user, I want a new object to represent a new data like a token. If I go for SBI Bank, in the queue, I will get one token, you will get one token, you will get some other token. The machine is only one which is generating the tokens, but every token will have different information. So when your data is changing from user to user, then you need to go for prototype. Otherwise, you need to go for singleton. So prototype beans are very rare in the project. 99% of the beans comes under singleton only. Only one object will be created. Same object we will reuse to call the methods to perform the operation. Are you guys getting my point? To be frank, in my project, there is no single prototype bean. All the beans are singleton. There is no prototype bean. Our project is having controllers. Our project is having service classes. Our project is having DAO classes. So for controller service DAO, do I need a singleton or I need a prototype? If I go for prototype, unnecessarily so many objects will be created and memory will be wasted. So we are going to consider them as a singleton. Only one object will be created. If 1 lakh request comes also, one controller object will be available, one service object will be available, one DAO object will be available. By using the same object, every time methods will be called. Are you guys getting my point? In the interview, they will ask a question. What is a singleton design pattern how to make Java class as a singleton. Do you know how to make Java class as singleton? Forget about Spring. Forget about Spring. 3 times we conduct workshop on the singleton design pattern. 3 times we conduct in the last 2 months of time. 3 times we conducted workshop on the singleton design pattern. Video also uploaded to YouTube. In the group also, we have sent a couple of reminders to attend the singleton design pattern. Check your group. The message is there or not? Yes or no? No. 3 times I sent that message. Please attend singleton design pattern workshop. You guys did not attend that. Karthik sir explained that. In the YouTube also video is there. What is singleton? How to make Java class as a singleton? Tomorrow in the interview, they will ask you a question. Can you write the Java code to make the class as a singleton? That means that the class should have only one object. In the Spring, you no need to write that logic. In the Spring, by default, the class as a singleton. But in the interview, they will ask, can you write the Java code to make the class as a singleton? That means only one object should be created. That is the task for you. Today, I want you to go through that video and understand what is a singleton, how to write the Java class as a singleton class. Can you do that? Right, fine. So with this, we understood what is bean scope and why we need to go for bean scope. So tell me, what is bean scope and why we need to go for bean scope? What is bean scope and why we need to go for bean scope? Bean scope will represent how many objects should be created for the bean class. How many objects should be created for the bean class will be represented by bean scope. How many bean scopes are available? There are 4 scopes are available. What are the 4 scopes? Singleton, prototype, request, session. What is the default scope of the bean? Singleton. When it is a singleton, what is the behavior of IOC? Only one object will be created. When the object will be created for the singleton bean? When the IOC container starts. You no need to call the getBean method. Whenever the IOC container starts, immediately it is going to create the object for the singleton bean. What is the prototype? Every time new object will be created. When the object will be created for prototype bean? Whenever you call the getBean method. Whenever you call the getBean method, then only object will be created for the prototype bean. Are you clear? Perfect. So here, in order to configure the scope, we are going to use scope attribute. Scope is equal to prototype. Scope is equal to singleton. We have 2 other scopes also, request and session. When we can use these scopes? When we are going for web application development by using WebMVC. In the WebMVC, we are going to understand request and session scopes. Are you clear? Perfect. Next one. There is a concept called most important concept in the IOC, that is auto wiring. There is a concept called auto wiring. Auto wiring is used to automate dependency injection in the project. So as of now, who is identifying the dependent object and the target object? IOC identifying, or I am telling that? Here I am telling to IOC to perform dependency injection by using ref attribute. Okay. If I am using ref attribute to inject dependent object into target object, that is called manual wiring. I am telling, hey IOC, you take the petrol object, you inject this petrol object into car object by using setter injection. Are you getting my point? So what is the meaning of this property tag? What is the meaning of this property tag? Property name is equal to ENG, ref is equal to petrol. So what is the purpose of this tag? To inform the IOC to perform setter injection. Are you able to follow me? But IOC is intelligent. IOC is intelligent. So you no need to tell what is your dependent object. Here I am writing property tag and I am specifying name is equal to ENG, ref is equal to petrol. Hey IOC, you call the setter method of the ENG variable in the car class. You inject petrol object into car by calling the setter method. Perform setter injection. I am giving that information to the IOC container. But actually, you no need to do that. You no need to tell that. So IOC container can identify the dependent objects based on the bin configuration file. So that is called auto wiring. That is called auto wiring. So auto wiring is used to perform the dependency injection automatically. You no need to write the ref attribute. IOC will use its brain. IOC will identify what is the dependent class for this target and inject the dependent object into target object. Are you getting my point? So what is the difference between manual wiring and auto wiring? What is the difference between manual wiring and auto wiring? If you are configuring the ref attribute, that is called as manual wiring. If you are configuring the ref attribute, that is called manual wiring. Right. So auto wiring is used to identify dependent objects and inject into target objects. Right guys, when we are going for auto wiring, no need to configure the ref attribute. So ref attribute representing which is the dependent for the target. If I don't use the ref attribute, IOC has to identify which is the dependent for the car. Okay, so here auto wiring concept is available in the Spring. Auto wiring is used to identify dependent objects and inject into target objects. Auto wiring works based on below modes. Auto wiring having a mode. First one is by name mode. Second one is by type mode. Third one is constructor mode is available. Fourth one is none is available. Okay guys, there are 4 modes available in the auto wiring. Can you tell me what are the 4 modes in the auto wiring? One is by name, second one is by type, third one is a constructor, fourth one is none. Now let us see here. Here I am having a class called car class. So here, what is the variable? ENG. Beans.xml. Here, I'm configuring this as a ENG and I'm configuring this as ENG1. What is the bean ID I am giving? ENG. For the diesel engine, which bean ID I have given? ENG. For petrol engine, which bean ID I am giving? ENG1. What is the variable name here? ENG. So this variable name matching with which bean ID? Diesel engine. Right. Now remove this. Now go here and specify auto wire is equal to by name. What I am specifying? Auto wire is equal to by name. Now observe guys, this is little tricky and a little confusing concept. Right. So here I am writing for the car class auto wire is equal to by name. So when I configure auto wire is equal to by name, IOC container will go to this car class. It will verify what is the variable name. Now it is a reference variable. So it is going to check all the reference variables and the names of the reference variable. What is the name available? ENG. Then it will check, is there any bean available whose ID is ENG? Yes. What is available? Diesel engine. Then it will understand that diesel engine is the dependent for the car. It will inject that diesel engine into the car class. Earlier, I specified by using ref attribute. Now I am not specifying by using ref attribute. Now I am configuring auto wire is equal to by name. What is the meaning of auto wire is equal to by name? It will identify the dependent object based on the variable name. If our variable name is matching with the bean ID, then that bean class will be injected into the target class. Are you guys getting my point? Now, let us go to test.java. Car object is created. Let me call C1.drive method. C1.drive method. Run as Java application. Which object is injected? So diesel engine object is injected. There are two beans available, but why it injected only diesel engine? Auto wire is equal to by name. Now here in the car class, what is my variable name? ENG. Okay. Now go to beans.xml. Let me configure this as ENG. Let me configure this as ENG1. Now which object will be injected? Now petrol engine object will be injected. Are you able to follow me? So tell me how by name is working internally? How auto wire by name is working? How it is identifying the dependent object? How it is identifying the dependent object? Based on the variable name. If the variable name is matching with the bean ID, that will identify as a dependent object. That dependent object will be injected into target object. Are you able to follow? Right. Now see car class. In the car class, there is a reference variable. So reference variable iEngine, ENG is available. Here ENG1 diesel engine, ENG petrol engine, car class auto wire is equal to by name. So then it will check when I write auto wire is equal to by name, IOC will understand car is a target class because I'm writing auto wire attribute. When I write the auto wire attribute for the bean definition, that bean will be considered as a target class. That bean requires dependency injection. IOC is intelligent. Based on the configuration, it is going to understand what is the target, what is the dependent. Suppose if I don't write the auto wire attribute, then what will happen? Dependency injection will happen or dependency injection will not happen. Now see here, go for the test class, run as Java application, null pointer exception. Why null pointer exception? This no object is injected to this variable. When the no object is injected to this variable will contain a null value, null dot method, null pointer exception. Are you getting my point? Yes, right. So how many ways we can perform dependency injection now? 2 ways. One is by using manual wiring. Second one is by using auto wiring. Are you able to understand? So tell me how to work with manual wiring. How to work with manual wiring? By using ref attribute. How to work with auto wiring? By using auto wire attribute. What are the options I can give for the auto wire? By name, by type, constructor, none. What is the meaning of by name? Based on name of the variable, dependent bean will be identified. Based on the name of the variable, dependent bean will be identified. For example, variable name is ENG. This one I am giving as ENG1. This one I am giving as ENG2. Auto wiring will happen or auto wiring will not happen? Auto wiring will not happen. Why auto wiring will not happen? Based on the name, there is no bean is available. Okay. So here auto wire is equal to by name. Now run the application. Run as a Java application. It is giving null pointer. So why null pointer? Why null pointer? What is the bean ID? ENG1 and ENG2. What is the mode? By name. What is the variable name? ENG. So is there any bean available with the name ENG? Not available. So IOC is not able to identify the dependent object. Are you getting my point? Now, if I change this bean ID to ENG now, so what is the variable name? ENG. So what is the auto wire mode? By name. That means in the car class, dependency injection should be performed for the variable whose name is equal to bean ID. Can I configure two beans with the same ID? ENG. Is it allowed or not allowed? Right, run this. Run as a Java application. I got a different problem. See what is the problem. Engine is already, ENG variable is already used in the beans element. So every bean should have a unique ID. Can I configure two beans with the same ID? Can I configure two beans with the same ID? Or I cannot configure two beans with the same ID? We cannot Now run this application, run as Java application. Diesel engine object is injected. So I am doing manual wiring or I am doing auto wiring. Auto wiring. So manual wiring is there, auto wiring is there. If you want to tell what is the dependent object, then you can go for manual wiring. If you want IOC to identify the dependent object, then go for auto wiring. By default, auto wiring will not work. We need to enable that auto wiring. Suppose if I remove this auto wire attribute, dependency injection will happen or dependency injection will not happen. Dependency injection will not happen. We need to enable that. Can you tell me how to enable the dependency injection? Auto wire is equal to some mode. What is the mode I am giving? By name. So how by name is working? How the by name is working? Based on the name of the variable, dependent bean is identified. Are you clear? Now let me go for by type. What is the mode I am giving now? By type. Whenever we give, whenever we go for auto wire is equal to by type, then it will identify dependent object based on data type of the variable. Are you guys getting my point? It will identify the bean based on the data type of the variable. For example, if I take petrol engine as a data type, if I take petrol engine as a data type, then here I need to change that variable to petrol engine. Now here I'm giving auto wire is equal to by type. What is the data type of the variable? Petrol engine. Now bean ID can be anything. It is 1, 2, it is 1, 2, 3. No problem. ID can be anything. I'm using by name or I'm using by type. I'm using by type. So what is the data type of the variable? Petrol engine. Now run as Java application. Which object is injected? Petrol engine object is injected. But is it recommended to write the class directly like this? If I directly write the class like this, what is the problem? Tightly coupling. I want my classes to be loosely coupled. How to achieve loosely coupling? By using interface. By using interface. Now here I am trying to get the car object. Car object is having auto wire is equal to by type. What is the meaning of by type? It has to identify the dependent object based on the data type of the variable. Are you getting my point? If it is a by name, if it is by name, based on the name of the variable, it will identify the dependent object. If it is a by type, based on the type of the variable, it will identify the dependent object. In our scenario, what is the type of the variable? What is the type of the variable? Interface. Interface will have a object or interface will have implementation object? Interface will have implementation object. How many implementation objects are available? 2 implementation objects are available. Which object it has to inject? Confusion for the IOC. Are you guys getting my point? When I give the by type, it has to identify the dependent object based on data type of the variable. What is the data type of the variable? IEngine. IEngine is a class or IEngine is an interface? IEngine is an interface. For interface, object will be available or object will not be available. For interface, object will not be available. Implementation class will be available. How many implementation classes available? 2. Out of these 2, which one it has to consider? confusion for the IOC, application will fail. Are you guys getting my point? Now run this application and test it. Run as Java application. We got the error. What is the error? It is a checking for unique bean, but no qualifying type of that bean is available. Single matching bean found two. There are two beans available with the type, but I need only one bean. Boss, I have two beans matching with the data type. I don't know which bean I have to consider for the dependency injection. I can't perform the dependency injection. Are you getting my point? Come on, guys. Now here, what we need to do? Here, we are getting ambiguity problem. This is also an interview question. They will ask that, I want to perform auto wiring with the by type. There are two beans are available which are matching with the data type. Then how dependency injection will happen? Dependency injection will happen or will not happen? Will not happen. Why it is not happening? Ambiguity is there. No, you understand the concept. How it is identifying the dependent in the by name scenario and in the by type scenario. How it is identifying the by name scenario? Based on the name of the variable, bean ID should match. If any bean ID matching with the name of the variable, then it will consider that as a dependent. When you go for by type mechanism, what it is doing? Based on the type of the variable. What is the type of the variable? Interface. Why I am taking interface? Loosely coupling. For this interface, there are two implementations are available. Out of these two implementations, which one it has to consider? Confusion. That is the ambiguity. So when we are getting this kind of ambiguity problem, we need to tell to IOC which bean it has to consider for the auto wiring. Are you guys getting my point? So here we are going to specify that auto wire candidate. Auto wire candidate is equal to true. Auto wire candidate is equal to true. So now let's run this application, run as Java application. 1 minute. No unique bean found, expected 2, expected 1, but found 2. So think not this. Auto wire candidate is equal to now what happened? Which object is injected now? Petrol engine. Why petrol engine is injected? I'm telling to IOC boss, whenever you are identifying the dependent, don't consider the diesel engine. I'm making that auto wire candidate is equal to false. By default, every bean is eligible for the auto wiring. Now petrol engine is eligible for auto wiring because diesel engine is not eligible. So when we are getting ambiguity problem with the by type, how to resolve that ambiguity problem? By making auto wire candidate is equal to false. Suppose for example, there are 10 engines available. There are 10 engines available. Then what should I do? For every bean, I should write auto wire is equal to auto wire candidate is equal to false, auto wire candidate is equal to false. That is not recommended, right? So in this scenario, what we need to do is there is an option called primary is equal to true. What is the option I'm giving now? Primary is equal to true. That means whenever you are getting the ambiguity problem, which bean you want to give as a highest priority for the auto wiring, which bean you want to consider, then you need to give for that bean primary is equal to true. What is the meaning of a primary is equal to true? Priority. So when multiple beans identified for the dependency injection, petrol engine will get the highest priority. This is one way to resolve the ambiguity problem. In the interview, when they ask you how to resolve ambiguity in the auto wiring, two options are available. One is the primary attribute. Another one, auto wiring candidate is equal to false. Now, I'm giving the primary for the petrol engine. Now, which bean will be injected? Run as a Java application. Which bean is injected? Petrol engine is injected. Suppose if I remove the primary from here, I'm giving the primary for the diesel engine. Then which one will get the priority for the dependency injection? Diesel engine will get the priority for the dependency injection. Same concept again we are going to work with annotations. I'm teaching with the XML. By using annotations also we can achieve the same functionality. Are you guys getting my point? Yes, tell me what is the purpose of primary is equal to true? When to go for primary is equal to true? When to go for primary is equal to true? When you want to give the highest priority in the dependency injection, then you will go for primary is equal to true. It is used to resolve ambiguity problem in the auto wiring. When you will get ambiguity in the auto wiring? By name or by type? By type. With the data type, multiple beans can match because my data type is an interface. Interface can have implementations. More than one implementation available, it is not able to identify the dependent. Ambiguity occurred. How many ways we can resolve that ambiguity problem? Two ways. What are the two ways? One is by using auto wire candidate is equal to false. Another one is primary is equal to true. Which is easy? Primary is equal to true. If I go for auto wire, for every bean I need to configure that. Lot of configuration we need to do. Good. By name will identify dependent bean based on variable name matching with bean ID. By name will identify by name mode will identify dependent bean based on variable name matching with bean ID. Okay, guys. Right. Next one. What about by type? What about by type? By type mode will identify dependent bean based on variable data type. So note, there is a chance of getting ambiguity. There is a chance of getting ambiguity. Ambiguity in by type. Why ambiguity in by type mode? More than one bean can match with the if variable data type is an interface. If variable data type is interface, then we can have multiple implementations. We can have multiple implementation classes. In this scenario, IOC cannot decide. IOC cannot decide which bean it has to inject. IOC cannot decide which bean it has to inject. How to resolve the ambiguity? We can resolve by type ambiguity in two ways. What are those two ways? One is by using auto wire candidate is equal to, by default it is true. We need to specify it as false. That bean will be ignored. What is the second option? We can give second option, primary is equal to true. If I give auto wire candidate is equal to false, that bean will not consider. If I give primary is equal to true, that bean will be considered for the dependency injection. Getting my point? Yes, perfect. Can you guys develop this application now? The notes. Practice this by name and by type. See how the by name and by type modes are working. You need to do this practice. As of now, in the by name and by type, which dependency injection happened? Setter injection happened or constructor injection happened? Constructor or setter? See here in the target class, what is available? What is available? Setter is available. So by name and by type happened with the setter or constructor? Setter. I want to perform constructor injection. Then mode should be constructor. Are you guys getting my point? That I will explain in the tomorrow class, guys. Okay. I am updating the material. Yes, sir. 1 minute, 1 minute. Can you guys check it? Today's notes is updated. Yes, sir. When you have by name, guys, listen. He's asking a question. When we have the by name, then why we should go for by type? So here, if somebody you are going for by name, you are giving ENG. Tomorrow, if somebody modified your bean ID in the configuration file, other programmers will work on the same project. If they change your bean ID, then dependency injection will not happen. They cannot change the data type, but they can change the ID of the bean. If they modify the bean ID, then your application will fail. Got it? Yeah. Perfect. Fine, guys. Good. Material uploaded. Today's content is added to that material. Bean scope. Yeah. Bean scopes I have added, and auto wiring also I have added. Not added? One minute, let me check it. If a primary, by default, primary is false. Someone is asking, what will happen if I use primary is equal to false? If you use the primary is equal to false, nothing will happen. Dependency injection will not happen. By default, the bean primary is false only. Can you check it now? Let me check it here. Yeah, now it is there. Thank you, guys. With this, I'm stopping for today. Then we are going to continue in the tomorrow session. Tomorrow morning in the project class, we'll start with the Maven. Thank you.